It's time for an energy update. My name is Christina Luna. I create these energy updates whenever I feel called. And today I've got a list of things. I'm going to talk about the energy wave of the first quarter of this year and how I see it going and flowing. I'm going to recap the last quarter and talk about the longer cycles that we're closing right now. I'm going to also talk about what I believe is really going on for consciousness at this time. And I feel that what's going on for the larger consciousness is actually incubating in every single individual person. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I believe is actually going on. And then at the end of this video, I will share some of my personal experiences over the last year or so that I think are connected to all of these things. And so if you are curious about where I've been and what I've been up to, I'll share that at the end. So first of all, we are at the end of January. We are just beginning to start the new kind of energy of 2025. I feel that things really are kicking off in a strong way this week with the new moon in Aquarius. And we're entering into the year of the snake, which is significant for many, many reasons. I'll go into that soon. But let me just talk about the energy wave of this first quarter. What I've been seeing, I've recorded more quarterly readings for folks than I've ever recorded readings for in any of my 15 years of astrology. And I've had lots of opportunities to map this energetic cycle that literally every single person's experiencing in their own unique way. And some of the key things are we are all feeling that an ordinary world has ended and a new world is beginning. There are the way that this is happening for people, for some people, it's that literally they've changed or some event has changed their actual physical living experience. So they could have moved, they could have had some kind of catastrophe, they could have had a massive breakup or relationship transformation, they could have changed careers, maybe their identity has shifted. There's been some area of every single person's life that has completed and is beginning anew. And so some of the things that people are asking themselves is, gosh, do I have to start over? Am I starting over? Like I put so much in, I invested so much. And the reason that we are all feeling that to some degree is that for the last 16 years, Pluto moving through Capricorn had us completely devoting and transforming ourselves through this devotion of creating mastery, of creating and investing in some area of our life so that we could become secure in that area, so that we could leave a legacy in that area, so that we could, ground ourselves in something. So for the last 16 years, while we were mastering this, we put so much investment into something. Maybe you invested so deeply into this relationship that's transitioned, so deeply into your title, your career, so deeply into your home. And over the last couple of years, it doesn't mean it happened like just this month, but it's happened in slow motion over the last couple of years to completely let you move on from that thing. And so in this month, we are all facing our internal attachment issues. Like, how readily are you allowing yourself to move into the next chapter of your life? How many threads do you still have attached to that thing that you had sunk so much of your investment and time and energy into? Are you able to wrap your mind around the fact that it's similar to investing in an education. When you invest in Capricorn like things, it's like you're getting a degree or a title, you're graduating from something. Like you don't look at like years spent in grade school or years spent in college as a waste of an investment just because it ends. You look at it as like okay, well, this prepared me. This gave me my license. This gave me my clearance. And if we could sort of look at the last 16 years as something like that, you got your doctorate in something. And just because that situation, that circumstance has now changed, it doesn't mean it was not valuable because it prepared you perfectly for what is to come. And I'll explain how that showed up for me personally at the end of this video, but I want you to first feel that and realize that if you were thrown into this new place where you have all the mastery of whatever you experience in the last whatever, now's the time to apply your mastery to creating something new that's in the vibration that you prefer. So let's say that you did this education over the last 16 years, you invested in understanding who you are. You did a journey of self-exploration and you identified as a practitioner of all of these modalities, right? You had a healing modality, you had a bodywork modality, you had an energy modality, you had a consulting modality that you served all these people with, and you built your identity based on all of these modalities, and it helped you to understand more fully who you are. If you're finding that that identity is now changing into something else, what you're being asked to do is point your lens at, so if you could point all of who you are, all that you've become, if you could finally own all of that and actually create something new in the world based on the vibration of knowing who you are, then what does who you are really want? What is going to increase the vibration of who you really are in an active, practical, present, tangible way? And the tangible piece is really important because we have, this is the last little quarter where we're finishing up a journey that we've had to have faith in internally since 2012. Since 2012, we have had a little flame of faith that we have put out in front of us, and we've actively worked toward that flame. And it gave us hope when things were dark. It pulled us out of the depths of despair when we thought there was nothing left. It gave us a little glimmer. It sometimes it wasn't even a little glimmer. Sometimes it was just like irreconcilable truth, but likely it was still internal and mystical and magical, or so ideal that you may have given up on it becoming ideal or becoming tangible or real, but it was still beautiful enough that it kept you going. So since 2012, we've had this little tiny candle of hope, or maybe you have a bonfire. Mine was like a candle. But when Neptune is the planet that sort of connected us with all of that through Pisces. Neptune is actually moving into Aries on April 1st. And so this little candle that we've been holding internally, that we've had in our subconscious, that's been driving our faith through all of this time, it's going to birth something. It's going to birth something tangible. And so the reason why it's more important than ever to let go of the last chapter and honor the last chapter and understand that it was a preparatory period of time, and to see and ask yourself, so what would I create, is because in addition to a lot of that energy moving into a new realm, we have the ability to make something we've had faith in. We've had the ability now to make it real. We don't even have to make it real. It's becoming real. And you can when I tap into this energy for people, it's the global theme, the global symbology is something that you've had faith in is now becoming real, is being born, is becoming tangible. What's happening, that's global. What's happening on a personal level is that we are moving, there's it's a very specific thing. Like every single person has a very personal wish. No one can tell you what that little wish is. It's very specific, personal, private, It's it's a soul wish. It's something that you came into this life to fully actualize in this lifetime, but it's been so beautiful and so ideal and almost so otherworldly that we have probably found a little coping strategy inside of us that says, well, this is close enough. This is a close enough approximation of that ideal thing. And maybe that ideal thing was never really meant to exist on this planet. And so there's this little tiny eddy that our creative energy is trying to get out of right now. And these couple of months, January, February, March, is specifically designed to locate that part of you within you that's like it's not like you've given up on the dream, but maybe you made the dream small so that you could realistically believe in the dream and not feel like you've failed in experiencing that dream. So there's this function inside of us and the button, so the stimulus of our life is trying to surface the ideal dream, the original blueprint of that beautiful dream that we've had faith in, that we've minimized in order to um, shorten the gap between what we're experiencing and what this ideal, beautiful thing is. Because the shorter the gap, the more comfortable and neutral we can be. But what's happening now, and we experience circumstances in this life that, well, there's a lot of different ways we can experience it. We can experience hard things. Hardship can trigger an ideal, or you can actually start experiencing more of the ideal and believing that actually it could get better. What if it could be even better? And so there's a couple of different ways you may have felt the eddy that your consciousness put you in neutral about this dream. But I would say that this first month is sort of stirring up that pot to try and help you to see how you've been minimizing the dream, playing neutral, keeping things realistic. And when you start to trigger the purity and the core desire of that ideal dream, it feels a little stretchy. It feels like it pulls you out of a certain comfort zone. Um, it feels like audacious to entertain. It feels like I should just be happy with what I have, or gosh, other people are experiencing X, Y, and Z. Why can't I just be grateful for what I have? And we are grateful for what we have. Probably a lot of us are feeling such deep waves of gratitude for the worlds that we've built for ourselves, for the relationships that we've accumulated and nourished and grown. And gratitude is a piece of this, being so grateful for the tangible experience that we actually have available to us. This isn't like an entitlement energy at all. The energy that I'm experiencing is, well, if I could create all of this, especially if I'm so personally gratified, if I could so personally gratify myself with all of this experience, then what's possible? Can I dream a dream for the larger world? Can I dream a dream for all of humanity? So sometimes having a personal dream satisfied can trigger sensations of, why couldn't this happen for everyone? Is this happening for everyone? If it's not happening for everyone, why isn't it happening for everyone? So that's one way that the dream can expand into a more conscious, um, it's like it does feel like desire. It feels like divine desire, but not like you're trying to save anyone, not like you're on a crusade. It's like the sensation of when you're looking for the perfect gift for someone that you love and you want to give them the experience of feeling so seen and so give like they're so understood, they're so seen, they're so loved that someone gave them the most perfect gift. So being a witness of that, it's like you want to give that to an even larger community or an even larger body of consciousness. I don't know. I, Mercury is moving into Aquarius today, so I hope that my message is landing for you personally, but I hope that I'm kind of helping to bridge something that is slightly intangible that I hope we're all feeling at some level, but we may not exactly know how to bridge where we are now to this ideal. And that's my point. My point is this quarter is helping to actually increase the distance of the gap to make that gap a little bit wider. Because even as I'm doing this hand motion, when the gap is very small and what you want and what you're experiencing is very close together, this is a very short distance for the energy to travel, and it keeps you in sort of a satisfied, present, neutral state, which is wonderful. What I'm suggesting, though, is that if you're in this grounded, stable, wonderful space where the gap is very small and your insides and your outsides are matching and authenticity is pouring out of you and you're experiencing everything you've ever desired, and gosh, like this is it. So there's so much presence available. This is when you get to brilliantly set set something higher. And you can see my arm, like my physiology opens up because there's always more. There's always more, not in a dissatisfied way, not in a scarcity way. There's an abundance. If you could create anything and you could create something perfectly and beautifully for yourself, is there a possibility where you could create something, a dream that's even larger, a dream for more, more than just you, more for the world? So we are opening the gap, and the physiology I'm doing right now is not an accident. When you go from neutral to more, the gap starts to open. And when the gap opens, our arms open. And in this stance, we are opening to the possibility that it's not something we have to do all by ourselves. There are people beside us. There's a network, there's a community. There are others who are opening their arms in receptivity to the more that could possibly happen for the world. And not only are there other humans, I believe there are energetic dimensions of consciousness that are working at every single level to expand our more. And we can't even conceive of how quickly energy can move when we're open and receptive to receiving assistance from these other dimensional energetic networks. But could you see how something in your life, if you can move your lens from, I invested so much in that, the past, like what's to come, what's to come, what's to come? There's a question inside of us right now that's asking, what's to come? Because that seems like it's changing. And I was so focused on that. And what's in front of me now? This is the question that I hope many of us are asking. And I hope that as we're asking that, we could start to include the ingredients of more into that recipe. There will be some energetic assistance with this in the early part of February. I just want to say we have some really exciting alignments that are every time I would get to this part of the quarterly readings for my clients, February 1st always felt like, whoa, I have no idea what's about to happen in your life on this alignment, but it is huge. It is going to align you in a way that you you may have felt coming, but when you actually experience it, I think it will be beyond anything that you've ever thought it could be. And that's because Venus will come into a conjunction with Neptune and the North Node, while Neptune and the North Node are coming into a conjunction. And we also have a moon at at that point too. So our body, our receptive self, our ability to receive, our ability to connect to that higher energy grid, our ability to feel the pull of evolution toward something that we've only just had faith in, and faith is huge, but there's something beyond faith, and that's deep belief, deep knowing. Faith is Faith is beautiful. Faith gives hope. Faith connects us. Faith is magic, right? But I do not have faith that this chair exists. I have absolute knowing and belief that I can completely surrender into this chair and it will hold me. And because of that, I don't have to think about the chair anymore. I know it's there. I don't have to put any energy into the relationship I have with this chair because we have an agreement that it's going to exist and I'm going to believe in it and it's going to hold me. That, could you imagine something that tangible with something that you've had faith in, only faith, that you've had to work on your relationship to it with the faith for probably your entire lifetime, but most importantly, over the last, since 2012, however many years that's been. I can't even, what is it, 12 years? Has it been 13 years since 2012? I don't know. My point is, if you had undeniable faith, belief in something that you've had only faith in, if suddenly that happened, how would the dream of your life change? What would you do? I remember sometime there's like this popular question that says if you could not fail, what would you set out to do? And that's an interesting question because boy, how interesting that our fear of failure or the capacity for us to fully know and believe something, how that supports a different way of moving in the world. So I believe that February 1st, even, January 30th, Uranus starts to move direct again in Taurus. This is a tangible sign. This is a sign that brings revolutionary, tangible evidence of something. When Uranus moves direct and then Venus comes into the conjunction, it's like this perfect like moment where you begin to really believe in the chair you're sitting in. You begin to really believe in something that is, you don't have to put any energy into having faith in anymore. So I'm making this video right now, I think, because that's coming up. And, I was asking this whole time, like, why is it helpful for me to share my perspective with people? Why is it helpful for me to do that? And I've just diligently been doing my readings and sending them off. And like, because some time has passed, I'm getting all of these reports back from people who are watching their readings over and over. And they're saying, like, oh my gosh, like, oh my gosh. And what I'm hearing from them isn't like, oh, Christina, how are you doing this? It's not about me. It's, oh my gosh, things that I have seen for my life, they're happening. And yes, I did sort of like talk about these things could be happening, but the fact that I'm an unbiased person, I don't know you. I'm telling you that these things are happening and then they're actually happening, and you don't have to believe that they'll happen or have faith that they'll happen anymore. They're literally happening. If you're being supported by forces beyond your belief or beyond your faith, then you have so much more validation and trust in your life. And so what I'm hearing in these people's voices and all these messages I'm receiving is, whoa, if this is actually happening, what does that actually mean? And it's clicking in, and it's like there's an acceptance of how powerful all of this actually is, and it's real. I'm not talking about astrology. There's a reality to the fruition of the dreams that we've been having, and there's a reality to our intuition. There's a reality to the guiding force. There's a reality to the the path. There's a reality to everything we work so hard to and to bring to fruition, to to invest in ourselves. It's becoming real. So I feel we're going to hit a checkpoint on February 1st where it opens up the dream, it opens up the gap. It opens up the gap in the very best way because it opens us up to trusting these higher dimensional connections. And pretty much all of February, it also brings the Jupiter direct. So both Uranus and Jupiter moving direct. Jupiter starts to have everyone talking about it. I actually feel that when Jupiter moves direct in Gemini, people are going to be expressing even more of their tangible lived experience. I think personal testimony of things is going to come up. And when someone shares a personal testimony of something that they've been experiencing on their internal and private life, and you hear them talking about it, and you've secretly been thinking and feeling and knowing the exact same things, it pulls that out of your unconscious, out of your subconscious, out of your private landscape into the world. And I hope that this video is doing that for you right now. I hope that me talking about what I'm experiencing in my internal landscape, what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, what I'm sensing, that you've been sensing and feeling the same things. And this conversation is triggering a real, tangible experience for you where you don't have to question this for yourself anymore. You don't have to ask yourself, is this real? Like something I've really noticed in me is I spent the last, since 2010, 2010 was when my brain fractured open. And I saw more than I could put context into. And I had no people in my world to confirm any of the wildly incredible things I was suddenly perceiving. I finally found teachers and peers and tribe. I finally found those people. But in the beginning, I was having an experience that was inexplicable, that could have been labeled schizophrenic. And from 2010 to now, for 15 years, almost 14 years, I spent my time trying to prove what I was sensing, not only to myself, but to everyone else. I did a 5 year study of the archetypal flow of the elements of the year. Where every single week I was monitoring this energy over 5 years, listening to people. I held groups to see, is this still accurate for you? Is this like proving as much as I possibly could because I couldn't just, I didn't just believe it. It was too phenomenal. It was too beautiful. It was too otherworldly for me to just believe. I had faith in it. I touched it. I tasted it. But it was all subjective. So for all this time, all of my energy and dedication was in educating myself and educating others about the reality that I was sensing and experiencing. And this huge turn has taken place now where I don't have to prove this to anyone. I don't have to prove it to myself. I don't have to prove it to you. Like I don't have to prove it to my clients. I don't have to prove it to try to sell it. I don't have to prove this anymore. It is real. The only thing I need to do now is figure out how to utilize it in the best way possible, to be in relationship with it in a different way so that we can actually co-create something together. And when I say we, I'm talking about I'm talking about the ephemeral, un like the intangible pieces of our reality, the intangible, unprovable pieces of our reality that science is slowly able to measure and prove, but that the collective is having a hard time just acknowledging that it's true. Just like, whoa. So I don't know if that made sense. Luckily, this is being recorded. I've got like an AI taking a summary of everything I'm talking about that might be able to organize all this information in a way that you can just read it and follow. But I have a feeling that the people who are listening to this and really listening to it, I have a feeling you know what I'm talking about. I think you've been doing the same thing. I think you have been on a path to prove something to yourself and others that's ideal, that's beautiful, that's intangible. I think you've committed yourself to it. I think you know that there's something that humans are capable of that we've only just barely scratched the surface of. And I think that I know I'm turning that corner now. I know that the time within the next couple of months, the time is now. It's coming. We won't have to spend any energy trying to have proof or faith of this anymore. Now it's just a matter of if this is true, then what? If we're capable of doing this, then what? What do we do with this? It's one thing to manifest a dream life for yourself, but it's quite another to use the proof of that dream life for yourself. Use that proof. Now, if you can do that, then what? What are we doing? Like I said, I'll talk about my personal life at the end of this, but I think you're reading between the lines here. So, so I said the energy wave of the first quarter. The energy wave of the first quarter is we hit this bump. We January was about navigating ourselves out of the eddy of neutral. February is expanding us to this broader energetic multidimensional network, not only a network of like human support, but a network of the fabric. It's the energetic fabric of the field. I'm going to side note here. The fact that David Lynch died recently and that my feed is flooded with David Lynch talking about the unified field and how ideas come in and how we are stewards of those ideas and how we are creators. The fact that our collective has been flooded with David Lynch is not an accident. That is the type of information that we should be flooded with right now, um, so that we can begin understanding that we're in the middle of this bandwidth of information. We're kind of in the middle of this thing. Our consciousness is like right in this neutral middle band. And there's a lot of information available this way that is fear and scarcity and distrust and betrayal and shadow projection. There's all of this, but there's also all of this. And I believe that David Lynch's messages have been about this bandwidth, this upper bandwidth. We've had plenty of news that's kind of entertaining the lower end of this bandwidth, but this has been available too. And we had to choose which frequency we're going to tune into. And it's if we tune into a frequency that gets down here, that's us digging us out of some kind of eddy. There's probably some little attachments, some little, um, or huge. There's maybe some subconscious fears that the information of the lower bandwidth stuff can like get into and like surface up to the top so that we can actually cough it out of our system and get those like deeper anchored stuff, get them out so that we can breathe more deeply because I really do see this as like our capacity to breathe deeply. If we're only breathing this deep and our inhale can only go this deep and our exhale is only this deep, um, that's like a very neutral breath. But if we take a really deep breath in and we find like some of that discomfort deep down and we cough it out, it creates space to take a really deep breath in to our body, into our shame, into our fear, into grief. We get really deep breaths in there. Then when we exhale, the amount that we can expand. Does this make sense? Sometimes I'm concerned that my metaphors are not landing, but this is me. I'm literally in real time stopping the flow of information to show you where my like barriers that are still requiring faith, my barriers, my eddies, they're still here. I have an eddy that says people don't understand what you're talking about, Christina. You're over explaining yourself because you think that people don't understand you. And this is you still trying to prove something or make accessible. And I suddenly just realized I don't have to do that. This information is accessible to you. You know what I'm talking about. I don't have to put extra energy into describing what I'm feeling and sensing because you already know. And so from this point in the video onward, I'm not going to spend quite as much time trying to describe from every vantage point what I'm talking about. There, see? Did you see that deep breath? That was a bigger, deeper breath than I've taken the entire time I've been recording this. We're 36 minutes in. I'm also releasing my attachment to, I'm releasing my attachment to like, I have to deliver you a million valuable nuggets in order for blah, blah, blah. I don't even know in order to what, like in order to what. Basically, I felt like we're coming up on this huge thing, and I have been witnessing certain people sharing their internal subjective experiences. And as I've heard them share those with me, it has strengthened my belief in my own subjective reality enough to want to share my voice, to want to contribute my subjective reality to the pot, because I actually feel that maybe my subjective reality and my description of that might land with you and trigger a similar effect. And if we all keep triggering each other to trust ourselves and to trust our story and to trust our voice, it will hit this tipping point where we don't even need we don't even need people to trigger our faith or our trust in that anymore. We just infallibly trust it. I think that that's where we're going. And am I've surrendered. I've actively surrendered to trusting myself enough to share disorganized if it is, whatever, it doesn't matter, to share exactly what I'm feeling and sensing and experiencing in the context of in the context that I'm drawn to talk about. So I think I'm going to stop talking right now about the flow of that. I'm going to let this kind of bump on February 1st happen, and I'll check in with you after. But I will share how I'm personally experiencing all of this, and what's been happening in my personal life over the last year or so. I mean, it was a year ago that I said I was taking a kind of a break from astrology. And I think last year we had the South Node finishing up in Scorpio, and then it moved into Libra. When the South Node moves through a sign, it's helping us to release our something that we're dependent on, release some part of our personality so that we can evolve on the other side of it. So while the South Node moved through Scorpio, which was in 2023 and into 2024. While it did that, it was releasing us from things that we were dependent on, that we thought that we needed to feel secure and safe in the world. And I personally, the place I thought I needed um, security most was when it came to my reputation as an astrologer. I physically needed to have this work in the world. Like I needed money to pay my bills. I needed to work as an astrologer. I needed to provide value so that people would pay me money so that I could survive. And I was dependent on my work. And so I put a lot of energy into being a astrologer and putting a lot of content into the world and holding groups. And I also needed to prove the astrology to others in order to feel secure about my work. Like I needed people to believe in what I was doing and my craft. in order for them to believe that what I was doing was valuable for them so that they would pay me money so that I could survive, right? So I had some codependency issues with my work, especially in 2023, which was not last year, it was the year before that. So in January, I started realizing this was happening. And whenever I realize I've got a codependent relationship with something, it makes me go inside and ask myself, like, why, if all of my security is on something outside of me, I have problems. This is a problem because that means something can be taken away from me and I will be stranded. I'll be destitute, right? So I had to pull my security in and ask, like, really do the work inside to find my own security. So the North Node was in Taurus during that time. Taurus rules the physical body, meeting physical needs. And I spent a lot of 2024 figuring out what my internal body really needed. I did something called Function Health, where I got like 150 um, blood indicators, like physical biomarkers tested to find out if there was something that my body needed that was making me feel like I'm not secure in the world. Fortunately, and I decreased the amount of time I was spending um producing content and like spinning my wheels in the world, I guess. Like I just took a pause. And I also, the North Node was in Taurus. I also looked at all my finances. I looked at all the numbers. I got to see what are the things I do in the world that actually support my needs? What are the things I'm doing in the world that are like, it was like the 80/20 rule. I 80/20'd my life. Like what's taking up 80% of my bandwidth that's only bringing in 20% of my needs, my life needs. What's the thing that I'm putting 20% in that's actually covering 80% of my life needs? And once I got the tangible evidence of all of that, I was able to focus more on the bottom line things that really fed me. And so I made different choices about how I spent my energy. I made different choices about food. I made different choices about the work I do in the world. And there was, yeah, 2024, I slept a lot. Like it wasn't just in my work. I was also looking at this on a global scale. I looked at it in my romantic relationship as well, and I did a deep investigation of that. In May of 2024, my partner and I moved in together into this beautiful apartment. And, maybe I should, if I'm sharing my personal story, maybe I should back up just a little bit. If you were following me in 2023, during Scorpio season of 2023, I started scripting. I started scripting, which is you write a statement that is from the perspective of your future self, thanking you. Like, I'm so grateful that I'm living with my family in this beautiful apartment and we're so healthy and we're making this much money. We feel so secure and we're surrounded by friends and family we're living our most authentic life. I started scripting this statement and I wrote it 3 times in the morning. I think it was 6 times midday and like 9 times at night. Like it was a ridiculous amount of scripting. I have a book, a journal that's completely filled. I don't know where that journal is. The entire journal is completely filled with me scripting this statement. And at the time, I wasn't feeling healthy. I was not living in an ideal living situation, even though it was beautiful. It was not, it didn't have a complete kitchen. I wasn't able to cook. I didn't have a washer and dryer. It was, we were kind of stacked on top of each other. There was not even a bed. There wasn't even it just was not ideal. So, and my relationship was experiencing turmoil in a confusing way for me. I had been with my partner for 13 years and we had a child together, but we couldn't seem to live together. Every time we would try to live together, it was like it just didn't seem to work. It was very effortful and difficult and hard, and I was confused about what needed to ultimately change. And so as I was scripting in 2023, I just put in, we're living in the most ideal setting. We feel completely at home and happy with each other. We're so healthy. And then you bake in due to five unforeseeable miracles. Due to these five miracles, all of these things happened, and I'm so grateful. So I scripted all of that in the fall of 2023, and it took only 6 months for me to actually, for all of that to come to fruition. I'd even like had some audacious financial goals. Like while I was scripting that in October of 2023, one of the audacious income goals was that we bring in $50,000 a month. Like the two of us, my partner and I bring in $50,000 a month. In November, we brought in over $50,000 into our household. And I will tell you the dramatic increase in that financial experience, it kind of shook me because I was like, what? Is it that easy? And it happened in November, but I think it was so like, huh? That I didn't sustain it. It happened for 1 month, and then I was like, oh, like what would it mean for my life if that kept happening? And because that was one of that inhalation felt like a lot for me to hold, I just I like tucked that money away into an account. And then I pretty much decreased it gave me the space to take kind of a quiet sabbatical in 2024 because even though I moved into a bigger space and my finances seemed to increase slightly, the money that I had received, I was able to very like carefully steward the resources, and I was able to kind of step back from some of these other codependent patterns I'd had so that I could like work on my relationships basically. So I worked on my relationship with astrology, I worked on my relationship with money, I worked on my relationship with my romantic partner, and honestly, all of it dissolved. Like like dramatic transformation happened in 2024 for me. It started out with first I was invited into a sacred, beautiful mastermind completely unexpectedly in February. And I had no idea that that would kind of initiate such a global change for me because essentially I was in this mode where I was like ready. I was ready to face all these changes. I was ready to face the reality, but I was also this in a human way terrified, absolutely terrified, and in grief. When I was invited to this mastermind, I drove there. It was in Palm Springs. I drove 10 hours and I cried the entire 10 hours because I knew that coming into this container was going to fundamentally change me, and the person that I was going to die. And this isn't my first rodeo. And so I grieved and I grieved and I grieved. And when I got there, I was a full like grieving mess. But we had an opportunity to do a cold plunge in a waterfall, like a snow melt waterfall. And me trusting my guidance, I had this prayer that I've only prayed it at pivotal moments of my life. I've shared that prayer before, but I'll share it again. The person that shared this prayer with me was an astrologer. His name is Ron. He gave me my very first astrology reading in 2009. 2009. And it was right, I had just completed my Saturn return. And I wasn't an astrologer at the time. It was before all this happened. And he said, you really want to, you know, find some alignment in your life. You should say this prayer. He said, take yourself out to a body of water and bring some oil. He said oil of spikenard. He said anoint your hands and feet and um and then say the prayer and then throw yourself into the body of water. And at the time when he told me this, I was like, first of all, you won't like, I'm a clean indoor girl. You're never going to find me putting oil on my feet and hands out in the dirt and then throwing myself into a wild body of water. This is never, ever going to happen. Like, that was where I was at that time. Um, but, and not only that, like the prospect of everything in that world like blowing up or like becoming realigned was terrifying to me because I was in a very, very safe experience in 2009. I was like, I was married to my first husband. We had a ton of money. I was like, I was very like a very like well-groomed, caged bird, basically, and terrified of my power, terrified of anything getting out of the perfect range. And so here I have this astrologer telling me I could say this prayer and everything will like basically change really fast. But yeah, this is the part of the video where I'm telling personal stories. So you're probably only here if you're still into this. Um, so it came to a head, and the first time I said this prayer, I was realizing that my life was trying to blow up by itself and I was resisting it and I was holding and I was scared. And so instead of throwing myself into a body water, instead of like anointing my feet, instead of doing any of that, I had a little stone in my hand. And I was at Yogananda's retreat in Oceanside, I think is where it is, like San Diego area. And it was a silent retreat. The silent retreat gave me tons of space to actually like download and commune. And it was 2012. It was December of 2012 that I was at this retreat. So a couple of years had passed, had never said the prayer, right? I'm here at this silent retreat. I'm ready to let go. And I find a little stone and I quietly whispered the prayer to the stone, so quietly, so timidly. And I said, please, God, take from me everything that's keeping me from you. And I blew into the stone, and then I threw the stone into the wishing well that's on Yogananda's retreat. And then I went home. I flew home, and I was like, we'll see. I felt like, first of all, right after I said the prayer in 2012, I felt so much peace. It felt like I was ready. It felt like I'd been trying so hard to keep everything together. All of my energy was like holding this line. I felt like I was walking on a razor's edge during that time, and it was tearing me apart. Like at the same time that all this was happening, this dear friend of mine explained to me that there's a certain type of worm that is so fragile and that if they want to study it, they can't actually cut the worm open with a scalpel. They actually place the worm onto a razor's edge and the worm will crawl crawl over the razor's edge, and just the pressure of the worm alone, as light as it is the amount of pressure needed to slice open its skin and not damage any of its organs. And God, the visual of that, like that's exactly how I felt life was in 2012 for me. Like the pressure of my own presence was the amount of pressure needed to completely slice myself open. And by 2012, I was finally surrendered to that process. And I barely whispered the prayer, threw it into there. I went home and I spent just a moment bearing witness without any fear, bearing witness to my life, like at the eye of the storm. And then within 3 weeks, I was completely divorced, completely moved out of my place, completely a new place to live, complete 100% quantum timeline shift. And it was so graceful. It was so supported. It was so fast. It was so elegant. I can't even, it was the most miraculous timeline shift I've ever had. So I'm saying all of this to you because this prayer is that potent, and I've only said it a couple of times. And I said it again in February in this mastermind at a body of water outdoors. It was the first time I officially did it with a body of water. I have literally, the only other times I did it, I threw a stone in a wishing well, I threw a stone into a pond, and I got into a cold bath. Those are the 3 times I did it prior to this. Oh, wait, no. There was one time that I said it with a friend in the hot springs. Okay, so I've said it one, two, three, four. I said it 4 times previous. Every single time I said it, I experienced profound realignment and timeline shift. But this one was the most intense because it was freezing cold water and I was outdoors and I was publicly sharing this prayer with a group of women that I had just met that I really admired and respected. I still admire and respect very much. And so there was like also kind of a risk of being it wasn't private is what I'm trying to say. There was a risk of being just seen as weird or different. And even that, I was ready to let go. Like, who cares? At this point, I don't even care if people can't accept how I am or if I can't just be who I am. I don't want people around me. Like, give me peace more than anything, right? So, said the prayer, had a stone, took myself into that cold water, and then my life like did the thing that it does. And by the summer, I was moved into a new space that's perfect for me. My relationship of 13, 14 years completely opened and transformed out of what it was before. No longer all of the cords were cut that were binding us into karmic patterns that were probably teaching both of us valuable lessons, but we had finally gotten the lessons. We didn't need to keep repeating them anymore. So those karmic contracts were completed. And I literally had a dream as I was completing that contract. You know the devil card in the tarot, how it has like a figure of a man and a figure of a woman. They have this like loose chain around their neck and there's like power standing behind them. So I had a dream that I was literally in that scene and I looked over at the person I've been sharing my life with for like the last 13 years, and we were both terrified. We both had these super wide eyes and we were both like, and we both signed the contract. We were both like, let's let's go. Like it was like, oh. And in the dream, I was like, oh, we were both so innocent. Neither of us knew what we were saying yes to. And it wasn't an evil thing that we said yes to. It was a really transformative. It was a Pluto, Saturn, like we decided to transform through the bind of that contract. And it was such a strong contract. If we hadn't had such a strong contract, I don't know. Well, we had to. We had to have it. Everything was perfect. So that contract was complete. And we were able to really beautifully and respectfully unwind the pieces of our life that were still kind of like that were just in the past, they were just stuck. Like no matter how far away we got from each other, the contract was too binding for us to fully release it until we finally both agreed to release it. I think it was a mutual contract that both of us had to sign to get out of. And so that happened over the summer, and it was difficult. And I'm so grateful that I had the extra resources to kind of float me through that, because I I had to reorganize who I was after that. I had to reorganize my relationship with everything from clearing that contract. And astrology was one of the things, right? My relationship with unseen forces was one of the things. Like, so I took my time. The mastermind continued to hold me in like a peer group and continued to help me. It just continued to hold me. I look back at 2024 and see how perfectly and beautifully elements held me through the transformation of last year. Beautiful friendships started, beautiful opportunities. I was able to contribute to a book, and the book went to bestseller. So I became like a best-selling author, which is a title that I you know, I've written a book that I haven't published, and I've been wanting to bring that book into the world, but being able to contribute to a smaller project and actually like break the seal on that was really beautiful for me to have that opportunity. And then I was able to get on stage and share my story about when my consciousness opened and what I know from this vantage point. So I got on a stage and shared with, I don't know how many people, over 100. It was maybe 100 and something people um, that were peers. So that was another big breakthrough. Um, so, and then, as if that wasn't enough, I, I guess I'll get into like I was able to feel what it feels like to not feel codependent on anything. Like as the South Node moved through Libra, I could feel all of my people-pleasing tendencies, um, all of the behavioral like processes that I had previously had in place, that so I could just keep like rapport and harmony with my life. All of that started being released, and I was able to just feel what it feels like to be authentically me, to say authentic yeses and authentic nos. The freedom to say yes to certain types of work and no to certain types of work. That granted me this deep sense of self-love and self-acceptance that I felt was fully present for me in September. And then from that place, I started asking the question of like, so what do you want now? Now that you have this feeling, you have this sensation of like the highest degree of self-actualization that I've ever experienced in my life. I don't know if there's probably degrees of self-actualization, but I really felt like this peak experience of that in September. I was like, I would love to share this with someone. I would love to share this experience of my love for myself in proximity to someone and really enjoy that. And so early October, I wrote down like, again, I always like there's a scripting. If you want to know when the best time to script is, it's going to be the end of September into October. This, I'm serious. The things that we put into the field during that time, the universe will co-create to create that, to bring it into fruition very strongly. And so, again, this year, I very cautiously, very humbly scripted something into my becoming. I literally only wrote it one time though. That's how potent the neural pathway is. I know now from my previous scripting experience that if I commit myself to writing something on paper and it has the elements of gratitude and joy and desire and playfulness and fun, that's a really potent recipe for me to manifest and attract to me exactly whatever it is. And that's what happened. I imagined myself listening to music and cooking and dancing in the kitchen with someone that felt so aligned and so themselves and so like like perfectly comfortable and well suited for me. Like I could feel so myself, and this person could feel so themselves, and we're just really having this synergy and this pleasure and this joy, and we're cooking together to make something new that we both get to enjoy. Like there was this like recipe of how I wanted to experience relationship moving forward. There was no attachment to of course I had like little things like I put things in the recipe like I want this person to already have the experience of parenthood so that I don't want to teach this person anything. I don't want to have to teach this person. Like please like I would like to spend time with a person who is at a similar place in their journey that I'm at. And so all of that was inherent in the recipe and then I didn't know how I was going to have that experience. In fact, I wasn't even super attached to it tangibly happening. I thought it would be enough for me just to write a new story, like have a character in a book that I write about and like write about the experiences. Honestly, I that's as far as I took it on a physical level. And then I was watching a show in early October. It was called Nobody Wants This. It's on Netflix. I was watching the show and I was like, oh, it would be really nice to kiss someone though. It would be so nice. And so from there, I was like, I bet you I could find someone. I'm gonna just get on Tinder. I at one point during 2020, I got on Tinder and I was like thinking about trying to date and I went on a couple dates and I was like, oh, I'm not ready for this. This is not like not ready, not ready, not ready, abort, abort, abort. And so it wasn't my official first time on Tinder, but it was officially my first time feeling like open to the experience, right? So I'm not going to go all the way into it, but within the first couple of days, I went on one walking date with someone. It was very nice. And I was just like, okay, I need to clarify a little bit more. I need to like add a few more details to this. And so I added a few more details energetically. And then the next day I met this other person and I was like, oh, okay, this is feeling like what I want to experience. And um, I met him. He met me for like 15 minutes outside my apartment. We walked by the river. And uh, yeah, of course I can look back and be like, I just knew. But there was this recognition, like this person felt grounded. He felt like he knew himself. He didn't feel dysregulated in any way. He felt like he could really like be in his own bones. He felt, I'm like speaking from like long story short, it worked. Like long story short, we cook together. We are having everything that I baked into that recipe and more, like more than I could have even fathomed, more like such deep and meaningful alignment on so many levels that like I never thought was possible. I've never experienced before. We Our brains can ping in certain ways. I don't need I feel like I don't even want to talk about it like because I'm sure if you've had this experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't had this experience, I want you to know that it's real. It's real. I am such a complex and strange little person. I'm such a, I have, I'm so particular in the way that I am. I thought I could, I thought I was, I just thought I was like destined to, um, you know how in the beginning of this video I was like, you're probably minimizing the dream so that you could just have a human experience without feeling discontent. I had minimized the dream and I just assumed that I'm going to walk the earth having a peculiar experience of life that no one will really ever experience with me. No one will ever really enjoy the Garden of Eden on earth the way that I do. And I was wrong because there is a person that's experiencing the garden with me and feels it exactly the same way that I do to my knowledge, to the way that my senses are sensing him. And so we've now transitioned through some of the early stages of relationship, and I'm realizing now that we're like, 4 months into this discovery that a lot of my bandwidth for my entire life went to trying to be trying to understand others the way I was hoping that people could understand me. Like all of my astrology, all of the work I'd done in the world, all of my like work on communication and relationship and therapy and all of that. I was doing all of that so that I could bridge myself into someone's world so that I could understand them and hold them and see them and have compassion for them the way that I was hoping I could receive that. And even astrology, the roots of my astrology discovery was, gosh, there's a way for me to understand people. There's a way for me to understand you. Like I could research this, I could understand why you're motivated and what you love and what you're afraid of and like how to hold that without hurting it more or causing more. Like there's a map so that I can understand you. Like that makes me emotional. Like how badly did I want that? How badly did I want that I built an entire library of being able to understand. That's so Chironian, right? Like Chiron is this archetype that feels this wound so viscerally that he searches the entire universe for the medicine of his wound. And in doing so, he understands all of the ailments, all of the ailments and how to remedy them. And yet he still cannot take the medicine for his own pain. He's still the only medicine that relieved him of his own pain was becoming immortal, becoming from immortal to mortal. He negotiated with Zeus to take Prometheus's place on the rock. He became mortal. He went on the rock. The vulture ate his liver out and he died. And death, mortality, was the medicine for his wound. I feel like my wound had something to do with really understanding the human, like understanding the human experience, feeling the human experience so much that I have so much compassion for the human experience. And that pain drove me to so much discovery. And I'm finding, I'll say one more thing. I'm finding I'm finally in the medicine of that, but it actually didn't come necessarily through this romantic relationship that I just discussed. That's like part of it, right? But the real thing that put me in touch with this medicine was a tragedy that I experienced in my family in December. They've discussed it publicly now, so I think I can talk about it. My, but I'll talk about why I'd even bring it up. Okay. First of all, before this incident happened, I think there was still a part of me that was using astrology to help navigate waves that could really damage life, like waves that could really take us down, waves that could really destabilize us, waves that, where we could, if we knew about it, we could prepare properly and it wouldn't kill us. I think I still thought that astrology could help us prevent some of the perils of human life. And I was using astrology in December to help my brother and his wife navigate their baby arriving. Their baby was due and their baby was late. And I was looking at the charts and I was like, wow, this baby is so late and this baby is going to be so special. And this is such a unique moment for this baby to be born. And I was looking at the charts and like, whoa, this is going to be so transformative. This is a really important baby. Like, oh my gosh, like the closer we get to this full moon and the like, whoa. So I was looking at the astrology and there wasn't any indication that there was something like there wasn't any indication of what actually happened. I couldn't I couldn't prevent it. I couldn't see it coming. I couldn't prepare them for it. Like there was nothing. And what happened was the baby didn't survive childbirth. And it was so shocking. Like the morning that I found out, I was I was drying my hair and I was like having this conversation in my head about the why we as creators, why we don't create as prolifically as we can. We can create so prolifically, but why don't we? And the answer was, well, because we can't bear for our creations to end. We can't bear for our creations to die. And I'm literally having this conversation, still no indication in my head that someone that I care so that something very very huge is happening in my brother's world, my brother and his wife's world. Like I didn't know that this was I'm not psychic. I didn't have like some kind of spirit come to me and say, oh, like, no, I'm just blow drying my hair and I'm thinking, oh, we don't create because we become so attached to what we create that we can't bear for it to endure suffering or pain. We can't bear for it to die. We can't bear for, and the longer that a creation is in fruition, the more attached we become to it, the longer that it is here. We like and it became so like ah if this child, for instance, if my sister-in-law had miscarried at an earlier point in her pregnancy, it would have been less painful, painful still, painful, less painful than if the way that it did pass. It passed in the birth canal. It passed halfway through its emergence into the earth. That moment was so acutely painful. And it was more painful than if she had miscarried earlier. And if the baby would have come all the way earthside and lived for a few days, that would have even been more painful than if he had perished in that moment. Like the longer that a creation is existing, the more attached we become to what we've created, and the more painful it is for us to let it go, to let it end. And we can't, like, attachment is the core of suffering because I got to experience viscerally what that really looks like. It wasn't through my body, but it was in such close proximity to my life and to people I love so dearly that I was able to see. And because we've experienced that mortal pain so intensely throughout our lives on different varying scales, we're very careful about what we bring into the world. We vet it very, very carefully before we invest in bringing it into the world. Because if it doesn't have a strong chance of survival, we don't want it because the pain of letting it go will be too intense. So our ability to create and to let things have a life of their own and to witness and experience it without projecting into the moment that we will lose it, that that is why we are not as prolific of creators as we could be. And if you're still watching this at a minute 20, if you're still with me, this is the core of what the last year had to had to transform me to. I had to like how vulnerable it is to begin a relationship after transforming a relationship I was so invested in for 14 years. The pain of that creation dissolving, dying, going away, changing. It's changed into something different. It's changed into something even more beautiful, in my opinion. My relationship with my father's daughter is so beautiful. It's more beautiful now than it's ever been, even though we're not intimately connected the way that we were before. It feels energetically intimate in a way that only a transition like that could be. And now I'm in this new relationship, and the, the expiration date is unknown. Will one of us die? Will something happen that will slowly degrade the romance? What will familiarity seep in and something that is so cherished? Like, I don't know. Do people invest in starting families if there's no guarantee, absolutely no guarantee that you can get it all the way to the finish line, all the way as far as we ideally would like it to go? That is the most vulnerable experience of mortal existence. And because we are so vulnerable to that experience of loss or that fear of loss, we are not as prolific of creators as we could be. And I feel that I have discovered, I feel that I've found the median eddy within myself, the little swirl of experience that I've been comfortable to ex to invest in and lose. I'm only going to invest in it as much as I'm willing to lose it. And I'm not going to overinvest myself because there's no guarantee, right? I was in this eddy of creation, and I am now breaking the threshold of that. I am stepping over the line. I am understanding that if for this moment I can create beyond the boundary in a way that may overextend my energy to create in a way that, if I lost it, it could devastate me. I'm willing now to step into that potentiality because I actually understand that the role that astrology plays is not to decrease the chances of something I've created being destroyed. That's not what it's designed to do. Destruction is something that we are all learning how to value. Death, decay, dissolvement, transformation, destruction. These are things to be valued. When we can value them truly, then we can truly create. We can truly value the beginning of something when we can fully value the ending of something. Like this has been said a million times in different ways, like to have loved and lost is more valuable than never loving at all, right? Like we wouldn't trade the years we have with a beloved pet just because we know at some point that pet will die. We don't not have any relationships at all because at, the only thing guaranteed is that someday it will end, whether it's through death or parting ways, right? So all of this to say that astrologically, the nodes have changed to Virgo and Pisces. We've released all of our like attachment to justice in Libra. Like, if I put in this, then this. If I do everything right, then nothing bad will happen to me. If that, then this. All of the negotiations we do in our relationships. If I say yes to going to your parents' house, then you have to agree to go to my parents' house. Like, all of those negotiations were what were dissolved while the South Node was in Virgo. Now the South Node is in Virgo. I mean, while they were in Libra, excuse me. Now the South Node's in Virgo and the North Node's in Pisces. And the North Node is saying it is time to evolve by opening up the bandwidth of experience to include more, more than you ever thought was possible, more than your individual self could have even conceived of. What if we release our attachment to our individual, individuated, personal world that we are working so hard to manifest and create? What if we let go of the personal for now, for the next 18 months, to understand what we're really a part of, the more that we are truly a part of? And so this is where we are. And there are a lot of there are world things happening. And if you're triggered by world things, then your recipe gets triggered by world things. There are personal things happening. Whatever, I'm like, it is not for me, it's not for anyone to say that any circumstance is the end all be all circumstance that's going to like level the playing field for everybody. Every single person has a different recipe. Every single person has different trigger moments to find the little eddy within them where they've remained neutral and to stir up that pot to bring the nuggets to the surface so that your bandwidth, our bandwidth, can include the more. So, yeah, we don't exist as an island unto ourselves. At least we do to a degree, but that's not the whole story. And so now, all that being said, if you're still here, will you do like a code comment? Code comment, what's the word? Okay, the word is word. Okay. If you actually are listening all the way through, will you just put in the comments word and whatever platform you're watching this video, just put in word. That's it. And it'll indicate to me that you have invested in listening to what's going on with me personally, because I'm actually really curious. I don't really, on a personal level, I don't actually think that anyone really cares that much about what's going on in my personal life. I think that that's a weird little eddy in my system too. Like, why would anyone care about what's happening in my personal life? It doesn't affect them. It's not about them. Like, it's not giving them value. It's not moving the needle in their life. It's not giving them outcomes to know what's going on in my life. I'll just share the big nuggets that they can use in their own lives and that will serve them and give them practical guidance and blah, blah, blah. I'll deliver the value up front, and if people really want to know, I'll share it at the end. And so I'm actually very curious to know if my personal story is also valuable just because it exists. And that's essentially where this quarter is going. I believe that when all the energy moves into Aries, we're going to find a healing of a wound that we've carried as a collective around our worthiness to be valuable just because it is, just because we exist, not because we're doing anything for anyone else, not because we're producing, but valuable as an end in itself because it is, because we exist. The same way that an infant baby is valuable simply because it exists, not because it delivers anything to anyone. It literally is incapable of producing anything except for poop and vomit and crying, right? But somehow these babies feel like the most valuable things as an end in themselves. We don't expect them to do anything for us. And the wound that's healing in all of our collectives is something on a deep personal level around our value as an end in itself. And I guess this is my way of sharing and proving to myself in this little window of finalizing the chapter of proof, right? That even my story is valuable as an end in itself. And so I'd just love to see. So comment word, please. Let me see. Is there anything else? I'm gonna just do more videos lately that are not so like they're not so structured. I'm gonna just be doing drop-ins like this because I feel called to do it, and I hope that my story validates your story, and I hope that it encourages you to do whatever you feel moved to do. I don't know what everyone's moved to do, but I moved to do this. I hope that you're moved to do something because I'm doing what I'm moved to do. And that could be an end in itself right there, right? All right, a minute 30. I'm going to peace out. Thank you for listening. I hope that this served you because I still care about that. And I can't wait to see how February 1st unfolds for all of us. All right. Bye bye.